Hello, and welcome back to Star Wars Minute. It's the daily podcast where we analyze, scrutinize, and celebrate the Star Wars movies 1 minute at a time. I'm Pete the Retailer from PeteTheRetailer.com.
I'm Alex Robinson from AlexRobinson.fun.
I'm Katharine Coldiron from KColdiron.com.
Yes, welcome back, Catherine. You're stepping out from an all-star week last week into a full week this week, and hopefully you are ready for the task, because it's I don't know where you stand on this film, but we'll find out shortly. The film in question, of course, is Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, and we're talking about minute 36. 36 starts with Rey healing the serpent, and it ends with the Knights of Ren posing on a butte. Posing on a butte. Now, this is the kind of, this is the hard work that I put into this show. I looked up. What is that? Is that a plateau of some sort? No, it's most likely a butte. There's a chance it might be a mesa.
Not a bluff,
it's a butte. Mesas are
probably
bigger.
a butte. Yeah, mesas are plateaus are like part of the land. It's like a giant kind of more part of the land thing. Then mesas are big, but kind of, more like an island. And then a butte is just like a little one like this. So
Yes.
I had no clue. You of course knew that already, Catherine, because you.
Well, I the only reason the dumb reason that I knew this is because I love the landscapes in Pixar's Cars. And in that movie, there's a distributor cap is a butte. And I just, yeah.
It's a butte.
It's everybody Canadian all of a sudden. I've never seen any of the Cars, and I have kids too, and we've never watched any of the Cars movies, and I'm thinking I just roll with it, and I'm sure one of them will come up with it. What's Cars at some point, but right now, I'm not going to instigate that. But if I do, I will look for the landscapes. I'll look for the buttes. So within Rey is healing the serpent. Let's start with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And we talked about it a little bit at the end of last week, but then this is a new power here, a new force, an expansion of the force. And I know we talk about force creep and how it's just like, magically they just kind of have new powers all of a sudden, which I do. I absolutely am against that. And yet I also am like, this is more in line with the force that I know, that I feel comfortable with, than, stopping laser bolts and, running real fast and stuff like that. Like, this is more just kind of like, oh, okay, it's an energy field created by all living things, and your energy field is communicating with their energy field, and you're kind of like, there's creating a balance in the force.
I see your point, but I also feel that if they had treated the Force more like this instead of like a superpower all along, then I would be willing to go along with this a lot more easily.
Right.
If the Force hadn't been portrayed as you can stop laser bolts and you can run real fast and you can push people away and you can, if it hadn't been portrayed like a superpower, this healing thing starts to feel more D&D-y, like more like Rey as a paladin as opposed to something entirely different as a space wizard.
Right.
So I don't love it, but something else that I thought as I was rewatching this was how much it's like one of the labors of Hercules, removing the thorn from the paw.
Yeah.
And so I started to think about, okay, are there other labors of Hercules that Rey does? And then I'm like, no, it's just this one.
There was some cleaning out of stables at the end of The Last Jedi, but that wasn't Rey.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
She had independent contractors do that out. She subcontracted it out.
Independent children contract.
Groom boys. And also Force Group, every movie and TV series introduces new powers, so it's not like this is you can't blame Disney for this. So, but along what you were saying, Pete, especially because if you buy into the fact that the Force is powered somehow by microbial organisms that live inside creatures, that would make sense that healing could be like my midichlorians are communicating to your or my midichlorians are going into you to somehow.
I'll have your
power you up.
midichlorians call my midichlorians. We'll do lunch.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, like, what are the limits of this thing? Like, could she go to Luke Skywalker's hand and hold it there, and the little, like, baby hand would grow out, and eventually he would have a new hand?
I mean, she says a little bit later that, like, she gives a little exposition. I forgot who she's
BB-8.
explaining to. Nobody asked, but she was explaining, to BB-8. Maybe BB-8 did ask. And she's like, I used some of my force to, like, I basically gave some of my force energy to the serpent because they needed some, more or less. So I think, and then she's kind of shaking her hand like it stung, afterwards. So I think if she did try to heal Luke's hand, instead, like, they would each have like a little half, like a toddler hand. You know what I mean? She would like, there would be like a balance. You know what I mean? She like a in between. Like if she grew his hand all the way back, her hand would be gone. But instead, there's like a middle point.
So
do you think so?
When Rey is healing this snake, does that mean, is it like giving blood where she's now weaker? She doesn't seem any weaker. In fact, we're about to see her do some crazy acrobatic stunts later on in the week. So, yeah.
Well, maybe maybe it's like it is like an exchange. So those are like the things that we see later in the week. Maybe those are her new snake reflexes.
Mm-hmm.
No, you guys, no.
This has gone way outside of what I feel comfortable with Star Wars, but still.
I think that for her to be able to commune with the Force enough to help the Force to heal other beings, I can go with that. I can. To imagine it as a balance that goes between them doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I mean, I have a rough time with a lot of stuff in this movie, and this is sort of not the worst of it.
Well, the balance thing, she kind of, she explains to BB-8 somewhat, or rather that, like, I gave some of my force energy to the serpent, and then she's shaking her hand. So it makes it seem like, all right, it was a little bit of like a transference of energy, and maybe it's not like full on, it's not like she would then have the scars or something like that, like
okay, but that's, to me, that's not how the Force works. It's not something that you are. It's not like there's a health bar of the Force. It's more that you have access to everything that's around you, and if you can call on that to do certain things, healing, sure, healing could be a part of it, I suppose. But to say it's like, her bar goes down as the snake's bar goes up, to me, that's not how the Force works. It's not like there's a pie piece that goes away from you and goes into something else. It's more like love. Love is not a zero-sum thing. It's not like a cup that gets used, a cup of sugar that gets used up. It's more about an energy that you can access either from yourself or from the world, or I don't know how you think love works, but it just doesn't make sense to me that the Force is measurable like that. Midichlorians aside.
I do recall thinking, because as we touched on last week, we saw Grogu heal Grief Karga either like within a week of this movie coming out, like right beforehand. And I remember thinking like, oh, you got us. Like, otherwise we would have been up and outraged the fact that a new Force power is being introduced, but they just got it in under the wire before.
With the cute, like, let's have the cute thing that everybody loves. Introduce this thing. Nobody can hate Grogu.
Well, but that Grogu can do it, to me, doesn't guarantee that any Jedi can do it.
Yeah.
And I only say that because my headcanon about Yoda's species is that they have access to Force powers that ordinary Jedi just don't. And so the fact that Grogu can do it, that doesn't really add much.
As much as I tend to shy away from the kind of the heavy lore, the kind of codification of everything Jedi, I do kind of like the idea that there's different flavors of Force, essentially, that there's different, we talked about it kind of during the prequels of like the living Force, which they, and so that there's different kind of, specialties within the Force that you can,
like majors. I majored in
like
Force
you can
running.
kind of focus on and be like, oh, he's more of a jumping, flipping Force versus a, kind of mind control Force.
Yeah.
And so I think that this kind of like it would make sense for me for both Grogu and Rey to be kind of, although then Rey also does, she's got dabbled in a lot of the other flavors. She was more of like a tutti frutti forcey.
She's
Well,
liberal
but
arts.
that's the problem with Rey in this movie is she starts to edge over into Mary Sue territory because she can heal, she can flip, she can, Kylo's version of the Force is very aggressive. That's why I think he can stop the blaster bolt. Not necessarily any Jedi could do that. It's to me, it's partly about, your personal power and access to the Force, and partly about, like you said, majors. So for Rey to be able to major in all these different subjects at the same time, I don't love it. It's and I don't use the term Mary Sue lightly because a lot of people do, and so my tendency is to be like, no, don't call them that. But it bothers me that this movie leaves Rey open to accusations of being a Mary Sue.
Right. I mean, to a certain extent, I will buy that you're as being kind of the lone focal point of all the, she's basically the only Jedi around. So like, all the Force things are open to her. She can just walk into any Force room, but I mean, we didn't have that, like Luke didn't achieve that. Luke was basically the only Jedi, and he didn't have instant access to all the cool stuff either.
Yeah.
But the Force is dynamic too.
Well, and we're also learning that there were a lot more Jedi around than we were originally told about.
Every 20 minutes, there's a new so, he was our last hope. Oh, and that guy, and that girl too. Oh, and this weird alien. Yes. You are collectively our last hope. Yeah, you in the back. Did you hear me? You're our last hope.
One thing I found strange about this scene is as she's using her Force powers and it cuts to a goggle-eyed Poe and Finn, and then it like slowly zooms in on C-3PO watching this all go on. Like C-3PO's reaction is the one we should be paying attention to. I thought that was such a peculiar choice. Can't think of any reason why it would be, unless he's so like. Does C-3PO know humans? I guess he knows humans normally can't do this, right?
Probably, but it does remind me of a really good riff from riff tracks where it's like the camera's panning really slowly and the riff is, I'm just a backpack. You should probably pan off me. So 3PO is like, I'm just a robot. I can't do facial reactions. Like, mime school only goes so far.
Yeah, I wonder if is this surprising to him? Because with the wealth of knowledge that he has amassed in terms of like what people can do and have done.
He's seen a lot of crazy stuff over his years.
But he's also very easily amazed. So
yeah, that's true. Although we also have to, how much of that is an act? How much of C-3PO's personality is an act to make other people feel like if he's kind of, let's say they're doing something and he's freaking out, is that, so then everybody else will be like, calm down, it's okay. So they'll feel calmer. I know that doesn't really work that way, but.
Or like the subroutine of protocol is to make humans feel more, puffed up about their abilities because he's amazed by this thing, even though it really shouldn't be amazing to him at this point. It's
like we're dealing with like, a toddler. Where they're just like, it's like, hey, I did this thing. Oh, wow, great job. Like that C-3PO walking around doing that,
It's probably it's probably.
Oh, you successfully navigated an asteroid field. That's amazing. Good for you.
It probably depends on I imagine it would have to depend on the user. Like, some people would like having something that was freaking out so that they could be like, okay, calm down. Now I'm focusing on calming this guy down instead of being nervous myself. And then there's other people who would want a more steady, secure person to calm them down. So it would really have to be kind of like his algorithm would have to learn your style of, whatever.
I wonder if
panic.
That's why he was set to somebody else's settings when they escaped from Hoth, and then when they were, that's when they shut him down. Then they probably also let's change those settings. Let's turn his anxiety way down here.
Yeah,
before they booted him back up, because then yeah.
I mean, I did notice he said things about the odds of things way more often in Empire than he did in Jedi. So it's possible that someone was like, okay, we're turning off the programming where we give you the odds on everything.
Yeah.
Like, and it's different. I've been watching a lot of Star Trek lately, and it's different than Data eventually learning that people don't like being told as much stuff as Data can tell them. I seriously doubt that 3PO has some kind of learning subroutine in the same way that Data does. So it's more like, okay, we have to shut this off. We have to shut this off. Let's go in and tinker with his stuff to make him less annoying.
Download the app and go into the settings and change all his his things.
That
privacy.
Not to take us too far into a tangent, but that's one of my favorite things about the Star Wars Next Generation pinball game is that, like, at the end of I think it's when you do something, or maybe at the end of your, once your ball is done and they're going through kind of all the points, and then Data comes on and like starts to explain something in a lot of like kind of techno babble. He's just like, oh, and you've accessed the hyper blah blah blah, and like goes off on a thing. And if you hit the flipper button, they don't tell you that, but if you hit the flipper button during that, then Picard comes on and cuts them off. So, thank you, Mr. Data, and you get a bonus. You get points for cutting off Data, explaining that. So
that's amazing. Oh, that's perfect.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh. So yeah, as for why they focused on 3PO, I feel like that's a directorial choice.
Yeah. But speaking of directorial choice along those lines, it took me a minute to figure out what, because when we do see the kind of reverse shot, the group shot here with Finn and Poe and 3PO and Chewie, it took me a minute to notice Chewie because he's holding the flashlight and pointing it directly at the camera. So we get, not only is he hard to see, but then we also get the trademark lens flare, which I'm not going to complain about. I'm just going to note when we see it.
Mm-hmm.
But he's kind of
pointing
this super bright flashlight right at the camera.
You would die of alcohol poisoning, Alex, if you drank every time there was a lens flare.
I'm going to do that. Like, he's like, it's not even that bright. I need something way brighter.
So the other thing that's interesting is that after Rey explains her very complicated force healing procedure, she tells BB-8, "You would do the same thing," which I thought was a weird assumption on her part.
That's no, sorry, no, I don't like that at all.
You don't think BB-8 would have killed the snake?
No, it's not that. I think. Well, so I do want to backtrack and talk about the snake situation a little bit, but I think for Rey to say that to BB-8, even though I don't know if this is established on the podcast, but for me, it's canon that the nicer you are to droids, the better a character you are in the Star Wars universe. Right. And so the fact that Rey has a special, like, treats BB-8 like a person kind of relationship with him, I don't think that would extend far enough for her to say, if you were a droid who had force powers, you would also heal a snake that came up in our path. Like, that's just dumb. It's a weird line.
Is it like, I mean, maybe on a much less specific scale, it's like, when C-3PO is just worried about R2-D2 and saying like, oh, if any of my parts, I'll gladly donate them. So maybe it's a similar kind of a thing where she's like, well, you would, if you had the chance to.
I guess
if you had the chance to save us from a snake, you'd probably do that, right?
Well,
but
yeah.
Specifically in terms of like healing. Again, it hinges a little bit on the like, oh, this is somewhat of a sacrifice, giving up some of your force to do that. That's what it hinges on, and I think that's why. I
mean, I think it would make more sense if the line was anyone would do the same. For her to address it specifically to BB-8 is what makes the line difficult for me. It's more if she said anyone would do the same, it would be a better line, because
maybe she knows that Poe and Finn and Chewie and 3PO wouldn't do it. You and I would do it. We're the only two.
You not so much. You maybe.
Yeah.
No.
Well, that feeds into the sort of nature of Star Wars since A New Hope is about sacrifice and what you will do to help others or harm them, on the dark side. I'm just thinking about Han, the Han coming back with the Millennium Falcon at the crucial moment in A New Hope is about him sacrificing potentially his life, where previously he wasn't able to. That's his character arc. And so this question is bigger than it seems, but I do think anyone is a better choice for that line.
Anyone but BB-8.
Yeah, I mean, if if she had said it to Finn, that would tie in with Finn's kind of learning about the Force and being like, oh, like you would do that. And he'd be like, oh, like
Yeah.
I would. Maybe that's my, like him learning something about the Force and getting in touch with his inner.
But Poe too has, I mean, the part of his arc in Last Jedi is learning what leadership is and what it's about.
Right.
And so for him, I think by now he would have done that. But for BB-8, it's a statistical unlikelihood.
The least likely to heal anyone.
Yes, the least likely.
That's what he won. He got that. That was his superlative in his yearbook. Least likely to heal somebody.
So, okay, I do want to go back to the snake for a minute. I don't know if this came up last week, but my feeling is that this section of the movie is very Indiana Jones-y. That there's the sense of a kind of archaeological adventure instead of a Star Wars-y adventure. And the snake to me is kind of part of that. So the fact that she decides to resolve this conflict by healing the snake instead of them fighting it feels like we're back on track a little bit. It's not that I objected to them falling in a hole and Poe having this very dashing scarf situation, but I felt like the energy was shifting more in the direction of Raiders and away from Star. And this movie, as I have watched it, has seemed more and more like a Spielberg copy. So like there's a lot of stuff in it that reminds me a lot of the way that Spielberg not only tells stories, but also basically does camera work and frames characters and does character work through camera work. So I feel like Abrams kind of went in that direction too much in this little sequence. So I'm glad we got back to the Force, but I'm not in love with the way that we did it.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about, I enjoy the movie, but you could basically just have them instead of finding out that they have to go here to find the dagger that then brings them over here to get the thing which brings them back. They could have just kind of realized, like, oh well, there was a Sith wafer. The Emperor had one of these. Let's go look at the ruins of the Death Star. They could have skipped Pisana altogether.
Yeah,
and still had the story move kind of in the same direction pretty easily. You miss a couple of character moments.
Lando.
You miss some fantastic C-3POing, but other than that, it doesn't do that much.
Well, it's out of my purview to talk more about that. I do think that this movie has a lot of sub-quests that are obnoxiously unnecessary in terms of storytelling. And that is all I'll say about that because you'll have other guests to talk about it.
Yeah, this week is one of the least disjointed in that sense. So
yes, I know.
That's true, yeah.
We'll get to it on Friday, but I'm honored that you chose me for this particular week.
I have one last question about the snake for you, Pete.
Okay.
If you'll recall, all the movies, does the snake count as a tentacle monster for your purposes?
No.
Was there a tentacle? Was there a tentacle monster in Last Jedi?
I don't think so.
Solo had one, and
there was
Force Awakens
not a
had
featured one. I think wasn't there like a potential like boar gullet at the bar or something like that?
What about the walruses? They had tentacles, didn't they?
The sea
sirens.
sirens, the ones that Luke milks.
Okay, they're
I
walruses.
think they had flippers. Flippers, I'm good. Flippers, I love flippers. Max Rebo, But yeah, it's mainly tentacle monsters that.
So no, it does not count.
And so no, I don't think it. I don't think not serpent definitely does not count as a tentacle monster here.
Okay.
And I can't think of one from The Last Jedi either. So there you go. It's two good saga films without a tentacle monster. We're headed in the right direction. Star Wars is in good hands and not tentacles.
It's in good flippers.
Yeah, there we go.
So I guess because the Rey healed the Vexus snake, the Vexus snake is like, all right, I'll break a hole in the wall for you. You can get out of here now. Did it
Very
know
weird.
that that's what they wanted? It was in their transference. Was there kind of like a list of wants and don't wants and things like that?
It is very video gamey that it's just like, achieve the thing, accomplish your mission. Okay. And then the door opens, now the door is unlocked and you can proceed to the next
Right.
thing. But I'm assuming that it was just kind of like holed up in a kind of recess there in a little spot in the cave, and it didn't want to leave there. But then once it was healed, it
I
was
have to
okay
say,
to move around. I don't know.
both times that I've seen this movie, I read it as moving away from the hole in the wall as opposed to actually breaking a hole in the wall.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's some video gaminess and there's some old fashioned fantasy-ness of it where, you know, you solve the riddle of the Sphinx and then it will move aside and you can get in the door. I just, whatever.
That sums it up.
I'm looking at trying to look into the novelization to see what verb they use. It slithered away into the dark, forging a new path in the hard-packed sand as easily as if it were an eel swimming through water. As easily as if it were an eel.
But does it
when
say
it disappeared, they could see a clear circle of sky.
Okay, so it sounds like it was blocking it more so than it bashed a hole in the wall. So Chewie pockets the magic dagger. We see him do that.
Oh, that close-up, man. That's like that. The close-up of that makes it seem like this is going to be a grave mistake that he has done this. But the actual consequences of it unspool really quickly.
Right. Yeah, I forgot that they had already found it and talked about it briefly. Like I just, was... I was like,
you mean
that's,
from
that's weird.
yesterday, the last minute?
From yesterday. No, wait, wasn't it...
Probably
34. 2 days ago, 34, 35. So, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, 34 they found it. So 2 minutes ago. I forgot about that already.
It was a long weekend, admittedly.
And but I was like, oh, that's weird that they just kind of like, he just accidentally finds this. I thought maybe, once the snake moves away, then they found it.
Mm-hmm.
But no, they found it. They talked about it. The Vexus takes off, and then Chewie's like, oh, better take this, and like puts it in his bag. And the one of two kind of, this is bookended later in the week with just kind of like making sure I still got this. That I don't like that at all. That's I tend to usually I call that kind of being directed in crayon or something like that, where it's just like make sure that we got this. It's like yes, we got it.
To me, that the close up here is to me emphasizing that Chewie chooses to take the dagger. Right. Which to me feels, it felt, again, the first time I watched this, it felt like it was a move where Chewie was being influenced by the dagger, that he wanted this thing, as opposed to it being, it's an important quest item, but it's also like, I thought that he wanted it for more selfish or more Sith-y reasons. And then it turns out that it's just a quest item, which is super frustrating. I think that it would have been better if there was more motivation or a more like long-term storytelling motivation for him taking the dagger.
I like the idea that he was just like, oh, Lumpy might like this if we, like he was going to bring it home to his family and be like, here's what I got from my trip.
So he's like Bilbo. He's like Bilbo Baggins of the Wookiee world.
Well, that or it's like Wheel of Time, right? Where the I can't remember the character's name, but the guy is being influenced by literally a dagger, and that's what this reminded me of. But also, the One Ring too is like I want to be picked up by someone, and so I'm going to cast a spell on this person.
Huh?
But no.
That's a little too magical for me. I know. I just said I like it when she healed the snake, but the dagger influencing Chewbacca, that's a little too much fantasy magic for me.
I have to say, Pete, like the way that you have responded to Rise of Skywalker across this season, like I find it totally delightful. Where I think a lot of Star Wars fans would just be mad at you, but I just think it's great that you're like, there's no logical reason why I like this thing and not this thing, even though because they're basically the same thing, but I like this one and not this one. I like good for you for standing up for. I just like it, damn it, because that's part of the last chapter of my most recent book is like we can't explain why we like things, and I appreciate you standing behind it.
Well, thanks. I'm also I'm also not telling anybody that they should like it because I do. It's an important thing that some people are just like, oh, I'm still, waiting for all these great things to. I'm like, I'm not saying they're. I'm saying I enjoy them. Your mileage may vary, as the saying goes. So
to me that's a crucial distinction between being a fan and being a jerk / fanboy. Is you have to look at Star Wars the same way that I look at Star Wars, and I just don't feel that way.
No. But happy we made the cut, or at least I made the cut. We'll see what Alex is feeling.
Well, Alex and I are on the same side of this movie, so.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about the Knights of Ren.
Let's talk about the Knights of Ren.
Let's talk.
I like their music video, standing on a bluff while I can practically hear the guitar solo going while they're on there.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Knights of Ren. Or it's more like video kind of a. We talked about this a little bit I'm looking back to earlier in the week. I don't remember what scenes it drops into, but this is kind of, I think, a holdover, or this is a snippet from a whole sequence where the Knights of Ren showed up. They Snap Waxley told Princess Leia, hey, the Knights of Ren are on the case. And then Lando came out and saw the Knights of Ren kind of defiling the Falcon. They go to find the Millennium Falcon, they break into it, and they're like, I
want them to be spray painting it,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Putting their tags on it.
Writing Knights of Ren, but then they misspell one of they leave out a letter.
NIGHDS.
Right. No, that's too easy, because then you can add one in. They're like KNG. Oh, damn it!
NITES.
But they So there's this whole thing where Lando sees them doing this, and it's just like, oh, those jerks! They can't do that to my ship. And then he's like, I'm gonna take Leia up on that offer and join up with the rebellion, or the resistance, whatever we're calling it. And so I think this is kind of tied to that, because there's no real point A to point B with this. It's just kind of like, we saw some people. We know Kylo Ren is kind of on the case, and then we just out of the blue, we just see, they're being chased by stormtroopers. Then once they're done, then we just see the Knights of Ren on this butte, and then also they are standing next to the ship later. So it somewhat unexplained, but stylistically kind of cool. I don't know.
Well, I want to, this week, the Knights of Ren are pop up all over the place. So I thought this would be a good, every day I'm going to, every day this week, I'm going to spotlight a different Knight of Ren, as we see in the Star Wars visual dictionary here.
Ooh.
It's like Kiss's solo albums.
Exactly. And today we're going to be focusing on Ushar. And according to this, Ushar is the knight most likely to force a prisoner to grovel for mercy.
Once again, we definitely need to make a Star Wars yearbook. BB-8, Ushar.
Yes, and
Sorry,
so
still laughing at
that's
that.
probably the most interesting thing about him. He carries around a war club with some kind of machine in it that makes it extra cool, and that's the whole thing about the Knights of Ren. It seems so self-consciously edgelordy, picturing them getting ready and looking in the mirror, all I'm cool. Oh man, look at my spiky gloves. That's really gonna scare people. It just seems so
You guys mentioned earlier on, you mentioned Slipknot, and I was like, that's it. That's the energy of all this.
Totally.
Yeah.
You know what? I think this shot, they brought that drone with them, and they're like, let's get up on the butte, and we'll have a cool, the drone will fly around us. We'll
Send up the drone.
Everybody hold your axes and clubs and stuff.
Yeah, so I know I said I was going to spotlight him. That's really the only interesting thing about Ushar. The rest of the description is all just he's tough and he hates prisoners, and he's really bad and so on like that. So you're not a fan of the Knights of Ren, Catherine?
Well, where did the Knights of Ren come from?
According to the visual dictionary, they were a bunch of almost Force users who were this gang. No one's sure whether they're really descended from the original Knights of Ren or whether they're just a bunch of troublemakers who are taking the name. And Snoke gave them to Kylo Ren as okay, you're my apprentice now. Here's your own little personal gang here. So
Wait, when you say the original Knights of Ren, you mean the ones? Is there an ancient thing, or is this just
Yeah.
like at the beginning of this whole?
No, it's tied into something from 1,000 years ago, and
Oh, okay,
that
right.
kind of thing. So,
And that's why he named. He was like, yeah, we're doing this, and it's like the Rosicrucians or something like that, where they're just kind of like, yes, we're an ancient order, or like
Yes,
we're
yes.
naming it, we're doing all this stuff after
Yeah.
the in the ways that these ancient cult did them, but they're not really related to them at all.
Yeah, at some point centuries ago, there was in fact a person named Ren who led this group of certified badasses
Right.
around the
Called
galaxy.
NWA.
I feel like it would. I mean, if that's cool, I would love it if there was a line about it somewhere in the movies instead of this all being on Wikipedia. But I mean, it would make more sense for non-obsessive fans if it was the Knights of Vader. And I mean, I get that they're specifically Kylo Ren's knights, but I also somehow got mixed up on the origin story because I thought that what happened was after Ben Solo laid waste to Luke's Jedi temple, that he gathered up a group of the sort of faithful to him, and that was the Knights of Ren.
Yeah.
A lot of people seem to think that. We thought that we were discussing it last week, and we thought the same thing, but Visual Dictionary does not lie.
Okay.
But after
is
that,
canon.
I think they might have come in and done there might be a comic story, I think, or a cartoon. I feel like I saw this or in some form.
Well, didn't we see in a flashback didn't Rey get a vision of the Knights of Ren all
she did.
standing around outside the burning school? So those seem like it seems like the Luke attempting to kill Kylo Ren and Kylo Ren blowing up the hut is a different incident than the Jedi school being destroyed.
In Return of the Jedi?
What's that?
In Return of the Jedi, when Luke blew up the hut?
Those seem two separate incidents that I guess a lot of people conflate in their heads.
No.
I feel like there was some story where there was like there was even like a group that were like the Knights of Ren, and Kylo was trying to kind of get in with them. And he wasn't cool enough to like hang out with them, but then like he did something. Eventually, he worked his way. He like defeated the leader, and then took over the gang or something like that.
It's funny that Ben Solo kind of had the same challenge of Anakin. Is that everyone at the school must have known this is Luke's nephew. You know what I mean? So he's like a special. Same way Anakin was like, oh, he's the chosen one. He's his own little weird. Like everyone doesn't like him because he has this aura of like.
Wait, is it common knowledge throughout the Jedi Order that Anakin was the chosen one?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question.
I didn't think it was. I thought it was.
We only see the council talking about it.
Yeah, no, I thought it was like Windu and Yoda were keeping that to themselves. But
well, definitely
either
the whole
way,
council
no, you're
knows.
right.
Because Qui-Gon says it to the whole council. Says,
Well, I think Qui-Gon was not my opinion is that Qui-Gon was not well respected by the council just because he often flew by his own lights, and I don't think they liked that. And so for him to be, flapping off about the chosen one, like who? Oh, come on. It's just Qui-Gon being ridiculous again. Maybe he'd found like 15 chosen ones before that. I was like, this kid. No, this kid for sure.
Always bringing
I found
home
the chosen one. Like, Master Qui-Gon, that's a chair. No, it really, he's right. Look at the chest is midichlorian. It's like,
looks like Qui-Gon's brought home another one of his special projects that he's going to be working on.
That's a protocol droid.
It seems stronger to have the Knights of Ren be renegade Jedi, but
renegade,
yeah.
Lorenzo Lamas.
So yeah, I mean, here is what I will say about this initial shot of the Knights of Ren. You're right; it does look like an album cover, and I think it would have been super cool and awesome if the Knights of Ren had lived up to their potential as they are shot here and as they are mentioned throughout the Apocrypha. I think that would have been really fantastic. That would have been a great opportunity.
I like that it does continue the tradition of Boba Fett, of setting up this really cool bad guy who's just kind of like, oh, that was really not really that much of a thing, was it?
Yeah.
So they'll have to retcon it in to have the Knights of Ren be.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I would love, because I was thinking, again, again, not my minutes, but I feel like for them to do what they did with the Knights of Ren at the end of the film is a huge mistake, not just storytelling wise, but also franchise wise, because that is a series. The Knights of Ren is a great series, and you can cross over with Mandalorian. You can, like, there's so much potential there that's just poof.
Well, you could still, I mean, that, you know, they're not afraid recently to go back and kind of set things in within the boundaries of the saga as it existed. So you can you can do some Knights of Ren stories from before.
Well, then I'll lean back on saying it's a storytelling mistake, but
yeah.
So
I mean, either way.
Please get a yes man for that week, because you don't want to hear from me about it.
Well, we do want to hear from you about more of the movie. Can you come back tomorrow, Kathy?
Yes.
All right.
I'll also come back tomorrow.
Yeah, you guys should come back tomorrow too.
All right.
I mean, I would not say no if you decided to turn the Star Wars Minute over to me, but I don't think you want to. So
why did we not think of guest hosts before to this point? We were 11 movies in, and now we're coming up with the idea of guest hosts.
Well, it's because we love you. Like it wouldn't be the Star Wars Minute without you two.
That's true.
Well, we'll leave the keys with the droid up front, and just let yourself in. If we make it, that's cool. If not, just feel free to start without us. We'll be. Hey, we just said, if you've got opinions about things that aren't in your minutes at home, and if you're listening to this at home, most of these minutes aren't in your minutes because you're not a guest of the show. But you can be on the show if you call our hotline 8DayGreedo. That's 8DayGreedo. I'm sure there's some numbers involved. I don't remember what they are. But dial that, leave a short voicemail that's funny, and chances are it might make it onto the show at the beginning. Maybe you heard one at the beginning of this episode. Who knows? If not, maybe you'll hear one tomorrow. See how it goes. But it's up to you. Pressure's all on you, everybody at home. Call up, leave a message, and we'll see you tomorrow on a brand new Star Wars Minute.
Star Wars Minute.
Star Wars Minute.